I'm Mr. McIntosh at the Dorsey Gallery, and would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Valerie Williams.
And you are an artist.
Yes, I am.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you are an artist, when you became an artist, and what kind of art do you do?
Okay, well, I was also born an artist. I don't think one becomes an artist. I think when you're born, you have that creative process, you have that creative spirit. My father was an artist, his brother was an artist. I came from an environment of artists. And because of that, I saw different forms of art. My father was a watercolorist. His brother worked in oil. Both phenomenal artists who unfortunately didn't get the acknowledgement that they should have, but they were really phenomenal artists. And I work with a number of different mediums. My claim to fame is I take pictures with the scanning electron microscope. I take photographs of little tiny minuscule objects like sand or fish scales. Anything that's tiny, I take pictures of. And when you take pictures of things that are this small and you magnify them several thousand times, you see something entirely different. The landscape changes. You go from a little round, smooth object to valleys and mountains and hooks. It's absolutely amazing.
No, that's interesting. And what's the tool you say you use?
A scanning electron microscope.
Is that a camera?
In a manner of speaking, it has a camera in it. It's a large microscope.
And what is that usually used for other than just looking at things? Because you seem to have stretched out the use of it.
Oh yeah, I have. It's usually used in pathology.
What's that?
Well, pathology is used for analyzing tissues, for diseases. If you have an ailment and you go to the doctor, and the doctor will send a specimen or a sample of your skin or other parts of you to a lab, and that lab will analyze it. If they can't analyze it, it's then sent to me, and I prepare the sample and I put it in a microscope, and then it's enlarged, and I can tell you basically if something's wrong with your cell.
Oh, wait a minute, doctor. I was just going to ask you, doctor, you use that, what do you call it? The machine?
Scanning electron microscope.
To do work.
Yes, it's
but
for
you
work.
have passed that and is using it to create.
Yes.
How did that come into being?
Well, the job itself, although it's a very positive thing because we find cures for people, we find out what's actually wrong with people.
No,
it's
no,
very
I don't
depressing.
want to talk about that.
No, I'm telling.
Go
it's
ahead.
a process.
Okay.
So the job itself has its downside. On one hand, we're helping people because we're analyzing what's wrong with them. We're finding cancers, but it's very depressing. So one day it actually occurred to me, I'm looking at tiny things. Why not put in some more positive things to look at? And I was given permission to use the microscope however I wanted in off hours.
No, wonderful.
So
that's
I had
wonderful.
full range either before work or after work. So I brought in literally anything that would fit.
So did using the machine that way change your life and you became an artist using that machine? I mean, did it come more beneficial to you, being the artistic value to you, using that machine the way you were using it to create?
Okay, on one hand, it was, I guess, beneficial because I was able to bring out the more positive parts of using this machine, but it didn't make me an artist. I was an artist.
Yeah, you said that.
Yeah, I was always an artist.
So before you used that machine, though, were you doing photography?
Oh yeah. I used 35 millimeter. I was developing film. I was printing. I had my first camera when I was about 10. But before that, I painted, I drew, I worked through the whole spectrum of watercolors, oils, acrylics, oil crayons, charcoals, pastels.
But looking at these tiny things, as you call them, gave you a chance to see what we wouldn't see
That's
with the
right.
regular eye.
That's right.
You like saw into them.
I became a voyeur, yes.
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
That's a good
I
word.
saw a hidden world that
Yeah.
very few people see, and some of the things I've looked at nobody has ever seen.
Well, did you get excited in a different way when you started looking at it in an
Oh
artistic
yeah.
way?
Oh, definitely. Although some of the other materials I looked at from people were beautiful also, it's just that they still had the connection of life and death with them. Mine are all life. There's no death. And it's just beautiful. It's architectural. It's all black and white. And it's absolutely beautiful. There's
Well,
no other word.
You know what? Now that you're sitting here telling us this, you will have to share some of that with the Dorsey Gallery.
I most certainly will.
When you get a chance or an opportunity to do that for us, with us,
Yes.
because it sounds very exciting.
I'd love to.
Because we'd like to see the world that you see.
Oh, it's a wonderful world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very
wonderful,
much.
Wonderful. Welcome to the Dorsey Gallery, and we're continuing our little afternoon of talking to the artists. And the artist is sharing with us. And I'm talking to Mr. Mims, but he wanted to jump the gun. Okay? Well, jump the gun, Mr. Mims. This is Mr. Mims. Introduce yourself.
My name is Louis Mims.
And tell them what you do and how you do what you do.
Okay. I'm an artist. I've been an artist for most of my life. I was fortunate or blessed to be discovered or found within the public school system, by which I spent most of my elementary school, high school, secondary school in art training, and also I wound up going to Pratt Institute. Any other questions?
Yeah, keep talking. Tell them what technique you work in, what material you use.
Yes, I'm a painter,
Tell them you
sculptor.
used to teach and still teach.
I'm a painter, sculptor. I've taught elementary school, high school, and also college on the college level. I've also taught art history. I've worked in the mental health system. I worked in the correction system, New York State correction system. I've worked with inmates in art. I worked with mental patients in art, and I've worked with young people in art. Primarily now I'm retired. I'm painting. I do sculpture. I do drawing. When I was in high school, I was trained in animation and cartooning. When I was in junior high school, I was selected for the UN UNICEF exhibition that went around the world. So I've been exhibiting mostly for the last 20 or 30 years. I first came to Dorsey when I was in Pratt Institute, and it was kind of an alternative to what I was learning in college when I was at Pratt Institute. And I found in Dorsey's a home, and I got to meet many of the artists I know today at Dorsey's. I've shown here a number of times, and I have work in Schomburg collection, and I occasionally show at least 3 or 4 times a year. Any other questions? My favorite artists, yes. I have a number of favorite artists whose work I respect. Gundi Pei, Art O'Neill's, Maxwell, Linda, okay, and a number of other artists.
At your illustrator's career, what haven't you told them that you do or you don't do that you should do? What
When
are you
I
doing
want to
now?
do.
What do you want to do? Yeah, what is
Well,
it?
I want to continue to make art. That's what I can do. I found that I cannot do or be anything unless I'm doing art, which means
Talk to them.
if I'm working a job, I cannot work a 9 to 5 per se, unless it's art related. I found that out the hard way.
You mean you've been fortunate enough to work a job where it was art related in your life?
Yes, this is basically because I have forced the issue. Because if I'm not working in an art related environment, then I become very aggressive, very angry, very disagreeable.
Well, you know how fortunate you are? You're almost like the artist that support himself with his art, but you circumvent that by working in the arts.
Hey,
that's fantastic.
Yes.
So how can we do that?
I don't know. No, that's just me. That's the way I'm made. Like I started out when I was 4 years old. I was drawing from the television. And my uncle saw what I was drawing, and he took my drawings to the teacher at the school. And at 4 years old, I was on my way to school, right? And so wherever I was, wherever school I was in, whatever class I was in, I was always drawing. And it got to a point, because I was also considered a moody and unruly child, that if I wasn't drawing, I was tearing up something. It was like, if I can't create art, I will create havoc.
Okay, did you do portraits?
Oh, I did. I've been doing portraits for a long time.
So when did you stop drawing and do abstract? Because you do some fabulous abstract, and you do some wonderful drawings, because I've seen you do some wonderful pieces here.
Okay, so I've been trained in the formal arts.
Where were you trained at?
I went to the High School of Art and Design. Mm-hmm. I also went to Pratt Institute. I was in special talent in junior high school and in elementary school. So all my training has been through art. All right. So when I got to Pratt, I had did the style of dealing with realism or representative art. And I simply got tired of it, so I wanted to do something different. So I got into abstract art, and then I started to study African art. And when I came to the point at the realization that African art was the basis of modern art and modern abstraction art, I just wholeheartedly embraced abstraction.
So when you say you studied African art, do you mean that you studied the books or the words, or you started doing African art? What was it you meant by that?
I studied books. All right. I've studied. Well, I went through many African art books, because at the time African art was not really taught on the college level. Mm-hmm. So what happened is I've been studying on my own. I studied African art. I studied the traditional African art, and then I got into contemporary African art, and then I finally wound up marrying an African artist. Mm-hmm. All right, Molly Marquis, who was from Nigeria. So when she and I went to Africa, it was interesting, because in one of my studies I was studying about the St. Joseph workshop, which was a workshop set up by the Catholic school to use the African traditional artists to decorate the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. Right?
Where?
So in Nigeria.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so what happened was when I went to Nigeria, I wound up going to the St. Joseph workshop, meeting the people who I had read about in the books, and reading the master carvers and their apprentices. And I found out that the carving system and the teaching system of African art was so impressive. And what I did was, I just absorbed the African culture.
Was that in Oshogbo or Susan Wenger's territory? No?
Yes.
Okay.
And so what happens is interesting enough, they gave me a couple pieces of cherry wood that I took back, I made a carving of one of them, and interesting enough, the carving got sold. I sold the carving when I had an exhibition at El Gyro, which was interesting, you know, in terms of reading about African art, going to Africa, getting a piece of wood from Africa, bringing it back, working on it, and getting it sold and selling it. And
So what are you doing now?
What-
In your artistic ability, what are you doing now?
Well, right now, I'm trying to explore a new boundary. What I've been doing throughout my life is breaking norms. What I was taught, I would always rebel against in school. So what I'm doing now is trying to compress or trying to combine two, 3, and 4-dimensional work.
Is that sculpture you're talking about?
That is sculpture, but is also can be applied to drawing and also painting.
Okay, well, okay. I spoke to an artist.
4-dimension.
Wait, give me a chance to get him now.
No, don't look like
No,
that.
no.
4-dimensional is just, well, you're just dealing with time. That's all. Okay?
Well,
Any other questions?
Where's your next show?
Well, I'm showing with the Fulton Art Fair at Bailey's. I was doing, yeah, Bailey's on I forgot the street. Yeah, in Brooklyn. Yeah. Bailey's Cafe.
Bailey's Cafe?
Yeah. But I did in the summer. I was a part of the artist walk with Ramona Candy's artist walk, and I did did a couple of things where I had in the window at Peck's, the store at Peck's.
I really like the new stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. Just.
Okay, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Jide Ojo. Sometimes you can see the colonial name attached to my names. One of the names is Albert, but the original name, my name is Olajide Ojo, shortened down to Jide Ojo. Many years ago, I thought about coming to America, and I worked very hard, bothering my brother was here. Eventually, I made it down to the United States by the year 1972, October, I can still remember. I came here with the sole purpose of pursuing my art education. Eventually, when I came here, it was very difficult, and I had to work. I had to work because there was no scholarship initially, which I later got. Initially, when I got here, I had to do a security guard job for some time, a dishwasher and a messenger, running in between some streets in Manhattan. And I was able to complete my bachelor degree BFA in the year 1974. That took me 2 years to complete. And then I went there on, I never stopped. I started to pursue my art career in terms of education. From that, I finished as I said before, I finished my bachelor degree in 1974. And I took a little bit of break, a year, before I embarked on my master's degree at Pratt Institute. This master's degree was completed the year 1979, was called Master of Communications Design, which has to do with art and graphic design. And we did it the old-fashioned way because computer was not around then, even though the technology was rearing its head. From there, when I was at Pratt, I was lucky enough to be able to earn a scholarship from the government of Nigeria. So I was able to complete my master's degree at Pratt Institute. And when I completed this in 1979, I was telling myself that I want to move on because the scholarship, the leftover of the scholarship was 2 years. So I had to find a way of using the rest of the 2 years. So I had to apply to a place where I could do my PhD, which I started at 1979 at Columbia University's Teachers College. This brought me face to face into education arena. It wasn't that easy, but I still enjoyed the advantage of having a scholarship whereby I didn't have to work. Everything was paid for, and I was moving around like somebody who's very well to do, which was very, very disconcerting to certain people. But eventually I finished this PhD in 1984. Usually what happened with us is that we usually like to go back to Africa to serve the country. In my own case, nobody bothered me, and it was, as a matter of fact, that part of the money flowing area in Nigeria, where money was flowing and the oil was flowing, some people didn't even know what to do with the money. But then nobody forced me to go back, so I stayed. And I started to look for a place to be able to earn my living and practice what I learned at Teachers College, Columbia University, whereby it was very difficult to get a college teaching, which would have been the ideal thing. And somebody suggested my going to High School of Art and Design, which I went to, and I was very, very much surprised that my work was welcomed and I was treated like a hero. And before I know it, I was there for 3 years at the High School of Art and Design. And because I didn't have a regular license, so I was asked to go by the end of 3 years, which was 1987. And so I came down to Brooklyn. I have a family, and I have to support the family. So I need to get a job on the double. So I found myself in the junior high school teaching special education. This I did for the next 6 years. Anyway, before I could move on to a high school in the Bronx, Taft High School. And to cut the story short, I came back to Brooklyn to teach at the famous high school, John Dewey High School, by Avenue X on Stillwell. That's where I remained for the rest of my teaching career until 2012, when I retired. During this time, I was still able to do my art, but not as much as I am doing it now, and I'm concentrating my effort. So that's why the project I have going now, the art show that I have in Chelsea at Rush Art Gallery, that's Rush Art Gallery, 526 West 26th Street, on the 3rd floor, 311. That was why it took me 12 years to put this together. So right now the work is there. Anybody can go and look at it. It's been extended to 12th of October. And I'm having an artist talk on the 30th of this month, 30. So please come and support me. So far, this is the how I've gone in the United States, because I've been told and warned and encouraged to stay in New York. New York is where I'm going to make my fortune. I hope I'm making my fortune now after staying here for 45 years. So thank you very much for listening to seeing this video.
Well, here we are at the Dorsey Gallery with Linda, the artist. Introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Linda Hewat, and I'd like to say that I have a long history with Mr. Dorsey. I started showing my work here, I would say, in the 80s. At that time, I was doing more realistic type artworks, mostly kind of Egyptian style. And Mr. Dorsey really liked my work. But once I started painting differently, when I stopped, I became a little bit more abstract. Dorsey said he didn't like my work anymore. So he didn't show my work anymore. But I have a lot of affection for Mr. Dorsey, and I must say he did give me my first one-woman show here. And I would also like to say that my grandfather was one of the Harmon Foundation artists back in the 1930s and was one of the originators of the Providence Art Club, which at that time, now it's very exclusive, and actually had never shown any black artists until about 4 years ago when I was able to show my work in there. So I'm very proud to say that, and I know that my grandfather must be very proud of me right now. I will be showing some work here next month, and now...
Oh, no, let's get back to you. You had said that once you changed your style, that Mr. Dorsey didn't appreciate your work anymore.
Right.
But so you mean you hadn't shown anything in the gallery since he stopped appreciating your work?
That's
or
right.
have you shown anything with the Dorsey Gallery since? You haven't shown anything?
No, I haven't shown here. I mean, I've shown other places, but he told me he didn't like it. He likes, you know, he like realistic type of artwork. I'm just going to say something about my technique, which I paint on constructed canvases, meaning that I always have strips that I glue on or some type of texture, and I paint on top of that. It's very rare that I paint on a flat canvas, but I do paint, even when I'm painting on paper, I'll put strips underneath it. And I also recycle my work, which I have been told that it's not a good idea, but if a piece is sitting around too long, I'll cut it up and turn it into something else. So that's basically how I create.
Oh, so is your creative ability, is it something you're born with? And was there anyone else in your family that had creative values that might have rubbed off on you, or you were born an artist?
Well, as I was saying before about my grandfather, he was a landscape painter. And my main interest is landscapes. I mean, he also, you know, created seascapes. So I think it's an inheritance.
So
yes.
what are you doing now? What is your forte? What are you doing now in style?
Well, still landscape type of thing.
Yeah,
that
I am so glad that you're back to the Dorsey Gallery, and we can't wait to see what you're doing now.
Well, I would really, I wish Dorsey was here so I could get his opinion.
Believe it, he's here. You seeing things? He's here, believe me.
Okay.
He's here. And he told us to bring you back.
Okay. All right.
That's good, ain't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We agree.
Okay.
All right, thank you, baby. Thanks very much.